Thank you for listening to the Bladder Battle Podcast special series, Flarey Tales. This series gives inspirational warriors with bladder conditions such as interstitial cystitis a chance to share their personal journey. This series is also intended to bring awareness and create conversation around the illness. This podcast is not intended to be a medical alternative for physician care, nor to treat, cure, or prevent any illness or disease. So please consult with your physician for professional medical advice. This episode is brought to you by Premium Jane, an exceptional manufacturer of high-quality CBD products packed with natural goodness. Relax, refresh, and revive with 20% off. Click the link in the description and enter BBP at checkout. Today, I invite body positivity influencer and chronic illness advocate Tayla Collison-Childs to share her personal story and her efforts for IC and bladder warriors. So, Tayla, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we dive into your body positivity movement, can you share a little bit about you, where you're from, and talk about your personal story with IC and fibromyalgia?
So I live in the UK and I'm 27 years old. I'm a mum. I've got a little boy who's 9 years old. And my story kind of started when I was 14. I started to get chronic pain, and I only got my diagnosis at the beginning of last year. So it took a really long time to even know kind of what was wrong, like at all.
Wow.
So I would go to the doctors, and they would refer me to the hospital. I'd spend nights and days in hospital, like just from being in so much pain. And I was just told that it was basically all in my head. So from the age of 14 to the age of about 25 and a half, so for about 11 years, I was just told that it was all in my head and that I was like making it all up for attention, which was really, really hard to take, because when you know you're in that much pain, you know something's wrong, and to be told that there isn't anything wrong and that they, like, professionals think that you're making it up, it was just a really like hard pill to swallow. So I basically just had to keep going back to the doctors. When I was younger, like I say, when the pain started when I was 14, the pain would only be at night time. So I'd be fine during the day, and then once I'd settled down into bed, I would just get these really bad belly aches and feel really, really sick. And so then, because we would then explain that to the GP, they would then say that I was making it up because I didn't want to go to school the next day because it was always in the evening. But obviously, like, I knew I wasn't making it up. And I was referred to gynae. So they thought it was gynecological most of the time. And I even had a gynae diagnosis. And it turns out that I didn't actually have it. They diagnosed me just to kind of get me gone, I suppose, because obviously, because I'd been to the doctors and been referred to hospital so much, they done a camera and I had a laparoscopy. So where obviously they go into your belly button and have a look around with the camera. And they diagnosed me with, like I said, a gynae problem, which was about thick veins that are on the outside of your womb and uterus, which then cause obviously similar pain to what IC does. But I got diagnosed and then just left for about 2 years. But within those 2 years, the pain started to get worse. So I ended up being referred back to gynae again, and they were like, "You haven't got that." And I was like, "Well, why did I get told that I have got it?" It was just really bizarre, and I ended up paying for private investigations. So I'm about 2 hours train away from London, so I got the train to London and went to a private clinic there who done some proper tests, and they said like it's absolutely, you haven't got it. But it's just crazy to think
Wow.
that a consultant would have diagnosed me with something. Like it's just bizarre that someone would say, yes, you've got this, and write it down on paper, and you actually haven't. It wasn't even if it was when I had the test done at the private clinic, they were like, you've got 0 signs of this condition whatsoever. So it wasn't even if it was a misdiagnosis of like, it looked as if I had it and actually I didn't. It was literally a case of I had no signs, but still they decided to diagnose me with something just so I would kind of be happy to know. But obviously I didn't have it. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was really mad. And to think, I remember going back, like if I look back at that time, I was working like 50 hours a week and just being in absolute agony all the time. So when I had the undone diagnosis of not actually having this condition, I ended up going back to the doctors, and that's when I was referred to urology because I had 6 UTIs in 6 months.
Wow.
And I was referred to urology. I saw a certain doctor and consultant specialist, and he done a camera in the bladder and said there was nothing wrong. So I then was discharged again, which had happened through the whole 11 years of everything. They would just do tests and say nothing's wrong. About a year later, the same situation had happened where I was just suffering with chronic UTIs basically, and was referred back to urology again, where I saw my different consultant, my current urologist, and he done the tests, and that's when I was then diagnosed with interstitial cystitis. So that was January of 2020. So only last year that I had that diagnosis. And then it was around 6 months later that I had the fibromyalgia diagnosis. So
wow.
They had said that they think that I've had the IC since the age of 14, but because I was obviously left for so long undiagnosed, without having any treatment, obviously interstitial cystitis is a condition that you're going to have forever, but you can have treatment to help ease the symptoms down, and some people can kind of suffice through their life as such. But because I'd been left for so long, it had come to a point where no treatment kind of works for my bladder. So then I had the fibromyalgia diagnosis as well. And I'm currently in the process of, I've been told I've got Fowler syndrome, but I've never seen it written down on paper. So it's kind of one of those, because I was diagnosed before with something, I didn't have it. I'm kind of a bit dubious, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes total
sense. Even
though
I kept going into retention, so I am now like a permanent catheter user. So I have an SPC. And Fowler syndrome is obviously when the muscle doesn't work, so you can't actually go for a wee. So it does fit into all my symptoms as well, that I have got that. And then I'm also being referred to cardiology for POTS syndrome, and then also to rheumatology because they're not sure if I've got rheumatoid arthritis. But so it's like that's 5 things altogether, if I do have all 5, that would have been diagnosed in the space of like 18 months.
Wow.
So
that's insane that it took
that long.
So long.
Yeah. It's
to get to this point.
It's just been it's been hard because it really did like affect my mental health, going through stuff like that, and it's certainly made me a stronger person. But at the same time, it's to go through that long knowing that something was wrong and always being told that there isn't anything wrong. I was just thankful that I finally did get a diagnosis. So
yeah, well, medical gaslighting is definitely a very real reality, unfortunately, and I've experienced it, and a lot of the guests I've had on the show have experienced it too. And I mean, we're supposed to trust physicians. They're supposed to give us the answers. We are not educated. I mean, some of us are, you know, we take lots of science courses or we go into something medical, but we're not typically educated in this. We put our lives in their hands and then they doubt us and it can really screw up our mental health. So, you know, kind of going off of that, how have these, I mean, you've gotten all of this in such a short amount of time and all of these came during a pandemic. So it's like you had a lot of things going on in the world and then you have a lot of things going on personally. So getting all of these diagnoses in the last 18 months or so, how has this affected you positively and negatively? Do you feel relieved? Are you depressed? Kind of, you know, how is your outlook now?
So when I first had the diagnosis, it was kind of one of those situations where, like I said, I was happy to finally have the interstitial cystitis diagnosis because I'd waited so long to finally, you know, be like, this is real, it's not all in my head. But at the same time, because of the diagnosis that it is, that it's a condition that is never gonna just disappear, that was obviously really hard to think about, because at the age of 27, to know that you've got the rest of your life ahead of you, to have this condition that's never going to disappear, that really hit hard. So negatively, it's been a situation where I think it was probably more, I think it's because I had the diagnosis in the January, and by the beginning of the March, I had an indwelling urethral catheter. So I think it was the really quick transition of going from having a diagnosis to then my health declining so quickly in such a small amount of time, which is what affected my mental health the most, because it wasn't just being told, right, you've got this and we're going to try and help with the symptoms, but it's never going to go. It was then at the age of, I was 26, then got on to 27. And to be walking around with a catheter at that age, that was kind of a nightmare. And like you say, that was the beginning of the pandemic starting in the UK. So as I had my urethral catheter, England went into national lockdown. So I couldn't even just go out and clear my head, because you wasn't allowed to drive wasn't allowed to drive anywhere to kind of, if you needed to go for exercise or go for a walk, it had to be within the walking distance. At the time, I just come out of hospital as the lockdown started. So I'd gone straight to my mum's because obviously I've got my little boy. So when things get really bad, we go and stay with her, and she supports me. So we were staying there at the time, and I've got 3 younger brothers and sisters. So that was hard, because I was stuck in a house. I think there was like 8 of us in one house, and you couldn't even really go far to go for a walk. So you couldn't just go and clear your head. And I'd find that I would go from being absolutely fine, and then within like the space of an hour, I was literally just breaking down in tears. And it was a case of like, why me? Like, why have I been chosen to have to deal with all of this? And I used to say to my mum, like, why does it have to? I didn't. There's people who have things wrong, and they've drank loads of alcohol throughout their life, or they've done something to cause that situation that they're in. But obviously, I hadn't done anything to not deserve it, but that's the only way I can really describe how I felt, was that I just was just like, I don't deserve to be the person who has to deal with all of this. And then as I had the indwelling urethral catheter, then having extra pain coming on, which was obviously then the fibromyalgia. Once I got the fibromyalgia diagnosis, I did actually start to feel a bit more positive. I think it was because it wasn't just, because obviously when you've got a bladder condition, nobody understands unless they've got one themselves. People can try and understand, but they're never going to know the pain that you've got. And to have all this other pain in my body, but think, well, it can't be related to a bladder condition. I think it was that fibromyalgia diagnosis that kind of helped me feel a bit more positive. And it was the urethral catheter really that caused I went into quite a bad point of being really depressed, and actually to the point of being suicidal. This was in July time last year. I was just in a really bad place. I couldn't put on a pair of jeans. The catheter would come apart and I'd just get covered in like urine. And if I wanted to to go to the shops, I couldn't, because I had to worry about what I was wearing. And so it was the urethral catheter, even though it's something so small, it's actually something that is so major. And I used to say to people, like, I can't even, like, you can get up in the morning and you can put on what you want. I have to get up in the morning and put on the same clothes that I put on all the time, because I can't even put on a pair of jeans. Because it used to, if I put on a pair of jeans and sat down, it would it would be agonizing. So to even get in the car and drive, it would be the same. And it wasn't until I had my suprapubic catheter fitted in November that I've started to feel a bit more positive about things. And sharing on my page is what has made me feel more positive about it.
Yeah, I'd like to get into, your body positivity movement, because like you said, having a catheter, it's a small thing, but it's a big thing at the same time. And, women already have enough pressure to look good, to, have a nice body and feel good about themselves and feel pretty. So then you think about this, and now you have a device you have to carry around with you, on top of all this pressure already for women. So I really love what you're doing on your page, and I think it's amazing. So I'd love for you to share that with our audience, and kind of some of the types of content you're posting, and kind of how this movement came to be for you personally.
Yeah, so it started, so September is Interstitial Cystitis Awareness Month, and I'm a part of Bladder Health UK, and I just decided that I was going to share one photo every day in September with a caption on it, just explaining something that either is a symptom or to do with my catheter, just so, because I haven't known anybody to actually physically have a catheter.
Yeah, same.
And the same with my family. Even though it's actually now, it's quite common, like when I see people with catheters online, but before there was nobody actually about. And so when I first had my catheter, I didn't have any, I had support, but I didn't have any support because I had my family, but I didn't have anyone who had gone through what I was then going through. And I wanted to be able to be that person that maybe if someone else was going through my situation, they could come across my page and I would be there. So yeah, I just started sharing in September, just basically about interstitial cystitis. But as the more content that I was posting onto my Instagram, the more it was helping me. So it was kind of like it was an online journal for myself. So I was sharing to myself about what I was going through. So I was writing down thoughts and feelings that maybe I hadn't spoke about, but I was writing them down to go to share out to everybody else who was reading it. So as much as I was raising awareness and kind of if other people who had absolutely no idea about bladder conditions or fibromyalgia, it was also helping me. And that's where I then realised that this is something that I really want to keep doing. It wasn't just a case of doing it through September and then just leaving it. I felt that I owed it to other people to really share it. And because, like I said, my health declined so quickly, I spent a lot of time in bed. So I put on quite a bit of weight. And that on top of everything else, like you say, people like women do actually have this weight on their shoulders to look perfect and look a certain way to what society wants them to be and how they should react and live their life. I felt completely the opposite because I just felt awful about myself of everything that I was going through. But the more content that I posted, the more I started to love myself and be more accepting of my body, because my body has been through so much and it's my body is such a young age. Like I'm 28 this year, which I'm still really young, but my body has been through more than maybe some people have actually ever been through in their lifetime when it comes to chronic pain and chronic illness. So I just started to, love my body and just be like, do you know what? This is my body and I'm going to share like what I want to share. And if I can make other people start to accept their bodies, then or even just educate at least one person on what condition I'm going through and other people are going through, then that was kind of perfect for me. And I've had so many people like message me and say that they've got catheters and they've never found anyone else. And I've helped them actually go to the doctors and then they've been diagnosed. So I'm definitely doing what I set out to do. But yeah, it's been one of those where it's definitely helped my mental health. It's been a complete positive thing all round, and I'm really glad that it's kind of started from something so small, but it's definitely helped myself, and like I said, I hope it's helped other people too.
Yeah, because I mean, just having a chronic illness, whether we look at ourselves physically and think we're beautiful or we're ugly or we're overweight or we're underweight, that aside, chronic illness, I think in general, especially for me, it makes me feel kind of gross. It makes me feel ugly. Like I have this disgusting thing that I have to live with now. And, like you, starting this podcast was my way of sort of getting that out to the world. And it actually was helping me to accept it and to create a community and to feel better and feel, just a sense of inclusion with others that maybe had some of the same symptoms, because that's the thing about IC is our symptoms are all so different. So you have a catheter and I don't, but I have other symptoms like lots of, urethral burning, and it's really hard for me to sit down. And I also get like tailbone pain and kidney pain. And I just feel so just kind of sick. Like sometimes I feel like I have a fever, like it's so strange. Yeah. So, it was really hard for me in the beginning of this to know, do I really have IC? Because I don't need a catheter and I can hold my pee, but I can't empty my bladder all the way. So, but it's not to the point where I need a catheter. And so, it's hard. So I love what you're doing. I think it's really important. Instagram's such a great platform for, creating community and finding other people that are going through what you're going through. So I think it's incredible. And I have to say, you're beautiful. So you should definitely feel beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
What is one feeling that you wish people could see when it comes to living with an invisible illness? So you might look fine on the outside. You've got your hair done, your makeup done. What do you wish people could actually see how you're feeling?
Do you know what? I think it's where, like, obviously the bladder pain is just, you know, how horrible that specific pain can be, and that it can be there all the time. And I just wish that, because that is one pain that no one sees, because it's all interior. Like, nobody sees that. And even before, when I didn't have a catheter, obviously, like you say, like sitting on the toilet for ages and nothing really coming out. And I wish that sometimes I wish that when you was walking down the street, or you're sitting with friends and family, like where your bladder is, it would make some kind of colour to know that it's like really bad, so people can look at you and go, okay, she's actually feeling really ill. Because nobody, like I said, nobody understands what someone goes through a bladder condition unless they've got one, and specifically interstitial cystitis. And as you said before, with all the different symptoms that each person has, it's not a one size fits all. And I have actually lost so many friends to do with this illness, and I'm actually happy I have, because it's shown me who my friends are. But when I was friends with those people, if I could be sitting there with them, or when I've cancelled plans, if they could just physically see that pain that I was in when I cancelled them plans, is what I would love. Does that make sense? Like, just literally that. Just even though I've got widespread pain, and I'm the same as you, I do get kidney pain, and my lower back is just like, the pain in the lower back is absolutely, I think that's one of the worst things. But when it comes to the bladder, if it kind of just went bright red, or do you know, like just that area went bright red, and people go, okay, she's having a really bad flare, she is actually really poorly right now, she's not just using it as an excuse. If there was like one wish that I could make, it would definitely be that one, I think. Yeah,
because I think it's a hard one to describe. I mean, I always just tell people, it feels like I have a UTI all the time. And a lot of people can understand that, or maybe they've had at least one UTI, but it's mostly women that understand it. Men don't understand it unless they've also had a UTI, which is a little bit more rare. So it is a hard thing to describe. And then a lot of people are ignorant, and they're like, well, you're a female, you get periods anyway. Like, really, how much more painful can it be? And it's like, oh, you have no idea. And you want to throw that into the mix. That's when my symptoms are 10 times worse every month. So now we got a double whammy going on. And like yourself, I have other autoimmune and chronic illnesses as well, that, you know, they go hand in hand. I swear they feed off of each other. It's like one, you know, flares up, the other one flares up. So then you have other symptoms in other areas of your body, and it's just really hard to convey how you're feeling. And for me, I always feel like I don't want to complain about this. You know, I feel like I'm a broken record, where I'm like, oh, it hurts to pee. Oh, my bladder's burning. Oh, I can't really sit down right now, or my back aches, you know, and you feel like a broken record. So I feel like all of us sometimes feel like being silent is easier, but nobody gets it and nobody understands. And so we tend to lose a lot of friends because they don't get why we don't want to go out. And I'm also 27, and I got my diagnosis in February last year. So very, you know, similar, pretty similar. You know, last year was kind of bad for me. And so I lost a lot of friends who just didn't understand. They used to make fun of me and tell me that I was like an 80-year-old woman. And I'm like, you don't get it. Like, I'm making an effort. I'm really trying. I would try to go out and stay out till like 11. Then I'd be like, okay, I've had enough. Like, I really need to go home. I can't really drink. And, you know, they just didn't get it. So I lost a lot of friends and had to kind of start over this year. But in all, it's like, even if I didn't have this illness, I wouldn't want people like that in my life anyway. Like, I want people to be empathetic and understanding. So it definitely makes you realize, it's made me realize what I want out of life.
So obviously I had those friends and they're not there anymore. And I was the one that kind of just, one day I just kind of had enough, and I literally just blocked them on everything, my number, social medias, and completely just got rid of like these people out of my life, just because we go through enough as it is, let alone having people that aren't there to support us. And if there's people there that don't support us, it just causes stress and just makes the whole situation worse. And I'm the same as you, where I try and stay silent, but then because you stay silent about the pain you're in, they then think, well, she can't be in pain because she's not moaning about it. But then when you do moan about it, you feel like a burden, because they're like, oh, well, she's saying she's in pain again. So it's kind of, I just feel like when you have any chronic illness at all, you get stuck in such a hard and weird position to be in as to what you feel is right and wrong. But it's definitely, made me realise that the type of people that I want in my life, my relationship broke down, a 4-year relationship broke down, and that was a couple of years ago that ended, but I'd been through constant pain throughout that whole relationship, and I feel that the pain and me being tired and all of that definitely was a factor into why the relationship broke down. But it's then made me realise what I want out of a partner as well. So it's, having a chronic illness, it isn't just negative, it is positive, because it makes you realise what you want positively out of your life, which at the age of 27 and before all of this, maybe I didn't know, and I had those fake people in my life and probably was holding on to a relationship that I felt I needed and didn't. So I do feel that even though obviously no one wants a chronic illness, at the same time it can have its positive things there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been going through the same. I'm trimming all the fat.
Yeah.
I'm done. I even got a new job because I felt like my previous boss was treating me so horribly, and I just, the stress of just being angry, the energy to be angry takes so much more than to be happy. So I saw that affecting me so much without even realizing it. It took me a whole year to realize it, but that's definitely a great thing to consider and keep in mind. Before we wrap up, I always like to ask everybody if they have any last thoughts, recommendations, or inspiration that they would like to share with other IC warriors. So any thoughts that you have, any inspirations, recommendations?
So one thing that I would say is that if there's people that are kind of listening to this who haven't got a diagnosis, is don't kind of give up. I started to give up, and then I finally got my diagnosis, but I now look back and I just hope there's people out there who will keep pushing. And my inbox is always open. I reply to everybody that inboxes me. So if anybody has any questions, like I'm absolutely there, because I don't want anybody to go through the lengthy process that I went through. But it's just don't give up, and just perseverance. And when it comes to kind of dealing with the pain and the day-to-day life, it can be really tough, but it's speaking to people that gets you through it. And there are people out there, like I said, when I first started, I didn't know anybody that had my condition. I didn't know anybody that had a catheter. So I just found it really hard because there wasn't anybody there. But now that I've been sharing my story, I've found that there are many people out there. So it's just make sure that you don't give up and look for people to talk to, because it will definitely help the whole situation. And always have a hot water bottle with you. is my final one. I have always got a hot water bottle no matter where I where I go, just because I actually have two. I have a big long one, which is absolutely amazing. I'm not sure if you've got one of those, but they're literally thin and long, and you can wrap it around your back and around your tummy, and they're absolutely amazing. So invest in a long hot water bottle if you haven't got one.
Well, that's great advice. Definitely everyone check out her Instagram. It's my_catheter_and_me. Lots of great stuff on there. So Tayla, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show and to share your personal story and your advocacy efforts. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Not a problem at all. It's nice to kind of talk about everything that I've been through and meet other people like yourself who've been through it. So thank you for reaching out and asking me to be on here today, because it's been an absolute pleasure, and it's so nice to talk to you as well.
Absolutely. I think it's a very cathartic experience for everyone. So I really appreciate your time. And I also want to thank our audience for taking the time to listen to the Bladder Battle Podcast special series, Flarey Tales. Make sure to subscribe if you're listening on YouTube, or leave a rating or review on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to your podcast. And stay tuned for the next episode right here on the Bladder Battle Podcast.